life group leaders. One of the things I did when I first came on staff is I started meeting with some of our most committed servants and leaders. And one of the questions I would ask them was, who helped you get to where you are now? Who helped you launch into this increased level of serving or influence? And the name that kept coming up was John Jung. And what's so interesting about that is John has led our counseling center for over 20 years. And so, something that historically would be viewed as looking backwards, you've been able to help launch a lot of our leaders within the church. So John, as our life group leaders, then sit around with their groups and want to help launch them into their calls. How did you do that? How have you been so successful at helping launch leaders and servants in this church?
One of my beliefs is that you can only keep something by giving it away. So and that's the paradox of the gospel. When I'm weak, then I'm strong. So the idea of giving something away is always something we need to be doing. So giving away leadership, what do you do with power? You give it away. You try to empower other people. And I'm more acutely aware of that now as I'm heading toward retirement. It's how am I going to empower other people? And I'm enjoying that.
That's awesome.
I think it's great. Yeah.
A great example has been the care pastor ministry. It started as what we call lay pastors. Now it's care pastors. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, when I first came, I was director of the counseling center, but also director of care ministry, and we had, at that time, maybe 2,000 people in the church, and it was a pretty daunting thing to think about how is one going to, direct care. So the idea of empowering lay pastors, training them, encouraging them, supporting them to do all the things of the body, including doing funerals and doing, getting involved in baptisms and hospital visitations and all those kind of pastoral care works. That's really what the body's equipped to do, should be equipped to do.
That's awesome. So one of the things you've talked about is how Jesus saw the woman at the well. I think that's such a powerful story.
I love that.
From John 4, I think. I should have checked, but yeah, I think it's from John 4.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite stories. I just bought a painting by a guy named Horace Pippin who encapsulated that. Jesus saw her. She was an outcast and alienated, and Jesus poured himself into her, engaged with her, and he didn't see a broken woman, which she was. He saw an evangelist, and eventually she went out and won this Samaritan town to him that nobody else could have. So he invested in her in something that she didn't even see in herself.
That's awesome. I've heard it said, we can either see, the early church saw Paul as the terrorist Saul, but God saw the Apostle Paul.
Yes.
So how do we see those members in our group? And maybe in those lone moments when we're vulnerable, do we see them through the lens of heaven and the calling and destiny God has on their life? I know you say you don't tell this story as well as Mike does, but Mike Berry was one of the leaders in Next Step and came up as a lay pastor, and he didn't want to do a funeral. Talk to us a little bit about when you see potential in someone and how maybe giving them an area where they can push them out of their comfort zone and help them move into their call. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, the encouragement of, oftentimes we don't see in ourselves our own gifts, but other people see that better. And I saw in Mike that this guy is a dynamic person of God and very gifted and talented, but he needed to be challenged in that area of doing a pastoral kind of a thing. He's a preacher. He's not he didn't see himself as a pastoral guy. Said, Mike, you need to do this. If you're going to be in ministry, you need to do this. And he at first refused, and then talked with his wife and said, I need to do this thing. So that's what happened. And it's a fun story that Mike and I talk about.
That's awesome. Mike started as a leader here as a care pastor, ultimately moved into a pastor of Medway as a church we partnered with when they were down to about 40. And now under Mike's leadership, they're worshiping over 700 in a new building. But just to think, he was afraid to do a funeral. But as we speak that into each other and we speak in the calling and destiny we see in them, people will move more fully in their call. And so, John, thank you so much for being here. I love that line. Character is ultimately what do we do with power. And in our groups, how do we help equip and empower, help each other see their strengths? So, John, thank you so much.